And he would treat it with epileptic treatment, but it came a time that nothing worked.
Epileptic medicine does not work for non-epileptic seizures.
La medicina epiléptica no funciona para convulsiones que no tienen una raíz epiléptica, nunca.
And it could hurt the person
Y puede
who's taking it.
lastimar a la persona que está tomando esos medicamentos. We have another question here. She had a question first. She had a longtime friend whose mother suffered from epilepsy. Oh, you know, the story says she knows them all of her life, and you know they were told this story that the mother was forced to marry by her grandfather. You know, enter into a marriage by force. As a result of that, she got so scared that she experienced a very high fever. Oh, the same night that, you know, she was told that she was, you know, she had to marry. She says that because of that, she started suffering from epilepsy and she never healed, but a doctor treated her. And he says it's not your brain, but your heart. Many times they would try to help the friend who was a neighbor, and she never wanted to be left alone. They would always help her. She died of old age, and she was informed by her doctor that if she reached the age of 65 and older, she would no longer experience epilepsy. She had many children, and none of them suffered from epilepsy. So, meaning that it was not hereditary. But when she would fall, she would jump on the floor, and there was no way to hold her down. They would use a pillow because she would slam her head against the floor. She says that she's in a little disagreement, not using a spoon, but they use a lot of the jaw because there's a lot of jaw movement. A doctor suggested to just take a rag and just stick it sideways. A little in the shape of a finger, but put it sideways. Because she would bite her tongue. Not she suggests not using a spoon because the spoon is hard and you can actually end up breaking the teeth. It was a daily event that she witnessed as a child. She said that she also likewise witnessed some lady at a store fall and that she reacted by, you know, sticking her legs so she would not bang her head on the floor, and she helped her. And 2 days ago, her daughter was at Publix. And the daughter called her and says, "Mom, I'm so nervous, I cannot even drive." And she says, "What happened?" I saw this very handsome tall man that fell. He only looked up and went like, oh, and he fell down and started bleeding. And it was another epilepsy attack. She has another example and she's asking for forgiveness because there's a lot of examples. This lady, there's another type of epilepsy where this lady was able to give her a warning. She would grab onto her arm and she would start, complaining, and it would give them enough time to lay her down. And it was always the left hand. And that's why the doctor said it had nothing to do with the head, but her heart. Yeah, so there's a lot of epilepsy types.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Let's try to respect everybody's time. Let's leave the rest of the questions towards the end, if that's okay.
Vamos a
with
dejar
everybody.
el resto de las preguntas para el final.
Is everybody okay with that?
¿Todo el mundo está bien? ¿Sí?
Cool. Thank you for sharing.
Gracias por compartir.
I celebrate your victory with you. Big time.
Celebramos las victorias contigo.
Can we go to this slide again, the next slide? And we'll go back to Mythbusters. And did you go back or go forward? We need to go forward, please. Go forward, forward. Forward, forward. There you go. One more. Thank you. Imagine again, if somebody is sitting next to you in your classroom, young people, and all of a sudden their body starts shaking.
Se pueden imaginar, gente, los jovencitos que están aquí, si alguien está sentado con ustedes en una clase y su cuerpo empieza a convulsionar.
And then their parents, the other children, their parents,
Y los otros niños, sus padres,
say to don't go near that child.
les dicen, no se acerquen a ese niño.
You don't know what they have,
Ustedes no saben lo que
and you don't
tienen
want to catch it.
y ustedes no quieren contagiarse.
You cannot catch epilepsy.
Usted no puede contagiarse con epilepsia.
Seizures can be caused by a lot of different things.
Las convulsiones pueden ser ocasionadas por múltiples razones.
High fever,
Altas fiebres,
injury,
cuando se lastima a una persona,
hereditary issues.
problemas hereditarios.
But if you sneeze,
Pero si usted estornuda,
you're not going to give somebody epilepsy.
no se va a contagiar a alguien con epilepsia de su estornudo.
So that brings us to the next one,
Esto nos da a la próxima diapositiva,
which is really hard to talk about.
la cual es algo muy difícil de abordar para ella.
And the myth is
Y el mito es
you can't die from epilepsy.
que no puedes morir de epilepsia.
Well, we've heard from people already
Pero hemos escuchado de personas aquí
that that's not true.
que prueban de que eso no es cierto.
My daughter's first doctor
De ahora en adelante, el que vaya a hablar tiene que coger este micrófono.
Okay.
Estamos saliendo por internet.
Okay.
my daughter's first doctor
El primer doctor de su hija
told me that there was no threat to Mackenzie
le dijo que no había ningún riesgo para Mackenzie
just by having the seizure by itself.
solamente por el hecho de tener una convulsión,
But the biggest threat
pero el riesgo mayor
was an unprotected fall.
fue una caída que no estaba donde no estuviese protegida.
And so me not knowing,
Y ella, al no saber,
I believed him.
le creyó.
He was wrong.
Él estaba equivocado.
There is something called SUDEP.
Hay algo que se llama SUDEP.
So go to the next slide, please. What is SUDEP?
¿Qué es SUDEP?
SUDEP is a sudden unexplained death in epilepsy. It's a mysterious rare condition, better known as SUDEP, and which typically young or middle-aged people with epilepsy die without a clearly defined cause.
SUDEP es una muerte súbita, inexplicable, en la que la epilepsia es una afección rara y muy misteriosa, más conocida como SUDEP, en la que por lo general personas jóvenes o de media edad con epilepsia mueren sin una causa claramente definida.
They meet three criteria.
que tienen, esto tiene que llenar 3 criterios.
Death is sudden and unexpected.
La muerte es repentina e inesperada.
There's no clear cause of the death.
No hay una causa clara de la muerte.
And that person has been diagnosed with epilepsy.
Y esa, por lo general, todas estas víctimas ya han sido diagnosticadas con epilepsia.
So having the faulty information from the doctor,
O sea que ella obtener la información del doctor que no era certera,
I found out about SUDEP by accident.
ella encontró la información acerca de SUDEP accidentalmente.
I was talking to the president of the Epilepsy Foundation,
Ella estaba hablando con el presidente de la Fundación de la Epilepsia
and in the course of our conversation,
y durante el curso de la conversación,
she explained her experience with seizures,
ella explicó su experiencia con las convulsiones,
as well as her daughter.
al igual que la experiencia de su hija.
They both had epilepsy.
Ellas las dos, ambas sufrían de epilepsia.
Then she told me her daughter was seizure-free.
Y luego me compartió que su hija ya no tenía
And
convulsiones.
so my mommy heart started to rejoice.
Así que el corazón de mamá de Jennifer comenzó a regocijarse.
And I said, praise God.
Y ella dijo, bendito sea el Señor.
And she said, no, she's free from seizures because of SUDEP.
Ella le dijo, no, ella está libre de convulsiones por SUDEP.
And I said, what is that?
Y ella le dijo, ¿qué es SUDEP?
So you can imagine the impact that has on the heart
O sea, ustedes pueden imaginarse el impacto que esto tiene en el corazón
and the stress on the mind
y el estrés en la cabeza, en su mente.
to live every day
El vivir todos los días
not knowing what's going to happen.
no sabiendo qué va a suceder.
So the next one is people with epilepsy shouldn't have jobs or any responsibility with stress.
El próximo mito es que las personas con epilepsia no deben tener trabajos que tengan estrés.
Because you might think with all of these things,
O sea, usted puede pensar que con todo lo que hemos discutido,
a lot of employers
muchos empleadores
don't want to be bothered.
no quieren pasar el trabajo.
But there are lots of people who live successfully
Pero hay muchas personas que viven unas vidas muy normales
in spite of struggling with seizures.
a pesar de estar luchando con ese tipo de condición de epilepsia.
Show the next slide and let's see if you recognize anybody.
Vamos a ver estos triunfadores que han podido manejar esta situación.
See anybody there you know?
¿Ven a alguien que conocen? Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Tubman developed seizures as a result of an injury.
Harriet Tubman desarrolló convulsiones como resultado de una caída.
She was very prominent
Ella fue muy prominente
as an abolitionist
como una persona que luchó contra la abolición de la esclavitud
and brought a lot of people out of slavery.
y trajo muchas personas fuera de la esclavitud.
We also have 2 U.S. presidents,
También tenemos 2 presidentes de Estados Unidos,
a chief justice,
2 jueces
and the sponsor of the Americans with Disabilities Act.
y la persona que dio el Americans with Disability, el acto de incapacidad americano.
So now we have laws in our country
Ahora tenemos leyes en nuestro país
protecting people with disabilities
protegiendo a gente con discapacidades
because of somebody who had epilepsy.
por razón de una persona que sufría de epilepsia.
And pardon me, my computer is stuck. There we go. All right, so there are a couple of musicians there too. One of them really famous, Tchaikovsky, which Mackenzie loves. He did Swan Lake.
Tchaikovsky, el que hizo la dama del Swan, ¿cómo es que? Del cisne.
And the-
También es muy famoso y que le encanta a
and
Mackenzie.
the Nutcracker Suite.
Y el que también hizo Nutcracker.
Okay. So what can we do?
¿Qué podemos hacer?
This is kind of heavy,
Esto es algo un poco pesado
and it can feel overwhelming sometimes.
y puede a veces te puedes sentir
So let's go to the next slide.
que te sobrecoge, es bastante fuerte.
And we can do 3 simple things
Podemos hacer 3 pasos simples
to help lighten the load.
para ayudar a alivianar la carga.
Number one, we can increase our own understanding,
Número uno, podemos aumentar nuestro propio conocimiento,
which is what you're doing by coming here today.
el cual ustedes están haciendo por cuanto
So,
vinieron hoy día.
thank you for that.
Gracias por venir.
Number two, learn seizure first aid.
Número dos, aprende primeros auxilios para convulsiones.
It is difficult
Es difícil
to put even a small thing in someone's mouth when they're having a seizure.
de tratar de poner, aunque sea una cosita chiquita, cuando esa persona está convulsionando.
You risk getting your own finger bitten really hard.
Poner algo en la boca, usted toma el riesgo de que se le muerdan el dedo.
Yes, sometimes they bite their tongue.
Sí, a veces se mueren sus lenguas.
Sometimes they bite the inner cheek.
Quizás a veces también el cachete interior,
But it is not safe to try to
Interno.
put something in the mouth.
pero no es seguro tratar de poner algo dentro de la boca de una persona que está
Hard or
convulsionando.
soft.
Aunque sea suave o duro, no intenten hacerlo.
And be compassionate.
Y bueno, sea compasivo.
We don't always know what somebody else is going through.
Nunca sabemos lo que la otra persona está pasando.
And when someone struggles with a chronic condition,
Y cuando alguien lucha con una condición crónica,
it's like walking uphill
es como estar caminando en una montaña hacia arriba,
on a really hot, humid day
en un día muy húmedo y caliente, caluroso,
with